You joined us about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, sometime over a year ago. We talked all about your content updating process. We're talking Pinterest today.
Me and everyone else who's running niche sites probably had their traffic just completely demolished by Google. Pinterest has this database of 11 million plus what they call interests, and Pinterest has been a big one for me the last several years.
What types of metrics Pinterest is driving you?
I am currently a little under 1 million clicks a month.
How frequently we post, how detailed we cover the topic.
The more likely one person come across your blog post, the more likely you can go ahead and pin all those more frequently or closer together.
How much of a volume game is this?
But right now, they've really opened it up. I've seen pins rank within a couple weeks, whereas in the past it would take months to do that.
How important is chasing virality?
How to, if you're going to a Christmas party and you've got, toddlers there, how do you keep them entertained?
How long does it take for me to get significant traffic?
So if you're brand new to all this, there's just going to be a natural learning curve to it, and it's going to take time. So I would say...
All right, welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman. Today we have a returning guest, Tony Hill. Tony, welcome back on board.
Hey, Jared. Yeah, thanks for inviting me back, man.
Good to have you. The background has changed, so something has changed in your office setup. It looks nice, though.
Yeah, thanks. I'm finally in my new house. Got it built, got in a few days before Christmas. It was nice, made it work. But it's nice to finally be. Now I'm up higher, so I've got a view over the neighborhood.
Oh,
second floor. Whereas my old office, I was halfway underground, and the birches were starting to cover up my windows. It was kind of becoming a bunker. So it's nice.
You are literally moving up in the world. Congratulations. All right, puns aside. You joined us about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, sometime over a year ago. We talked all about your content updating process.
Yeah.
We were talking before we hit record today about, I was saying how today's topic really doesn't have much to do with that. We're talking Pinterest today, and you told me you thought it actually did have something to do with it. Obviously people can go listen to the previous episode. It was one of the most popular episodes of that year. We'll link to it in the show notes, but kind of catch us up on who you are, and then maybe if you could transition us into how there is connection from your old podcast episode on updating content and what we're talking about today, which is basically a Pinterest kind of deep dive.
Cool. Yeah. So if you don't know who I am, I've been running niche sites for almost 20 years now. Makes me feel a little old here, but yeah, I got my start with Google AdSense back in the day, throwing up some websites and figured out how to rank on Google very easily, very quickly. And so, started making money from a portfolio of niche sites. And I've been doing it ever since. And I've had my ups and downs with Google over the years. So I'm used to it. It's nothing new. I mean, what's been happening since last September of 2023 through, now summer 2024 with niche sites has been pretty brutal with Google. Kind of unprecedented, in my time and doing all this for 20 years. So, fortunately, I've had other alternative traffic sources, and Pinterest has been a big one for me the last several years. And I'm really glad I had doubled down on it several years ago, because it's honestly helping things, keep things afloat, to be honest. So, me and everyone else who's running niche sites, probably had their traffic just completely demolished by Google. So there was a content updating process that worked really well, early last year to the previous year, 2022. It's really started to dial it in 2021, 2020. And it was a great process. Within, updating a piece of content, within a couple of weeks, I could start seeing traction come back, and rankings are coming back and getting more traffic revenue. It was great until it wasn't, until September of 2023 hit, and started crushing me and so many other people. It's been rough.
The day all of our content became unhelpful.
That's right. It's just frustrating because, I spent, and I think I talked about this in the last podcast, head on a little bit, but man, I spent so much time and money paying experts to write my content and to edit my content. I had a portfolio of medical sites. I was paying doctors the content was ghost written, but I'd have a doctor edit it to however they want to, and then had another doctor review it. I was doing that before big sites big medical sites were doing it. And then I've transferred that process over to other niche sites because I'm not really an expert in the sites that I run, and I wanted to rely on experts. And so it was just even more devastating to see all these sites tank, even though I had experts writing the content. And it's funny because now when I'm using ChatGPT to like generate content, I can easily tell that it like literally was trained on my content because it's writing in the style that I was paying these experts to write in. So it's a little tricky then. Like, how do you come up with unique content then when like ChatGPT already has everything, right? And trying to fill that gap. But I'm not really worried about it as much these days because Pinterest has a lower threshold of like what they look at in terms of quality and everything. You can get away with a lot more compared to Google, which is kind of the beauty of Pinterest in many ways. So, when it comes to going back to updating content, what's been interesting about doing this for Pinterest is, there's content cannibalization with Google, and you don't want to start covering the same topic or a slight variation of a topic. Otherwise, like, you start to see this correlation of your rankings going down and Google's getting confused on like topical authority, but there's really no like topical authority keyword cannibalization with Pinterest. And it's like, I had this light bulb moment several months ago with Pinterest because I've been, almost 100% in on Pinterest, spending a lot more time over there these days. And so I'm just discovering more things about it and testing more things. And one of the realizations I had through some conversations I've had with other people who have been on Pinterest for a long time, and that's their whole thing. They were like, you can basically, like, one of the things that they were doing is they were copying one of their blog posts. I think it was like a Christmas blog post, which does really well on Pinterest. And they would just literally copy it word for word and put it all into a new post and then change the year and then create new pins for it and publish the pins, publish the blog post. And it's the same exact topic. Everything is targeting the same keywords, the same text, completely duplicate content, basically. And they don't care if Google indexes or not because they're creating a new URL, which Pinterest really likes to see. And then they're creating new pins. And so who cares if you've got a second article on the same exact topic? So that was just eye-opening to me. Like, oh man, I could really scale things out and creating, I guess it's super good content. And, is that a great user experience? Well, you kind of have to approach it a little differently. Like, I hide duplicate posts from like the category pages or like the related posts section and everything. But it's just a different way to feed the Pinterest algorithm versus the Google algorithm.
Hey there, thanks so much for listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast. Did you know that Jared and I are members of a private group called the Niche Pursuits Community? And today I want to share with you how you can join for just $1. The Niche Pursuits Community is a private members area for niche online publishers to mastermind and grow their businesses together. We hold weekly calls live with experts where you can ask questions. These experts share tips on Amazon Influencer, Google Discover, building email newsletters, getting traffic from Facebook, and other strategies to grow your online business. You'll also be assigned a mastermind group of 4 or 5 other people in a similar stage in business as you. Dive deep into your business issues and get your problems solved. If you use coupon code PODCAST at checkout, you'll get your first month for just $1. Go ahead and give it a try. Come join me, Jared, and lots of other digital entrepreneurs inside my private group at community.nichepursuits.com. And be sure to use coupon code PODCAST. I'll see you on the inside.
It's interesting to hear you kind of talk about it. I think a lot of people have come on the podcast and talked about pivoting away from their focus being Google into something else, whether it's Pinterest or Facebook or YouTube or the list goes on. There's been a theme, which is how freeing it's been. It just feels like everyone feels like the shackles to some degree have come off in creating content for other platforms. I know when I write my email newsletter every week, like, I don't think about headers and keywords and internal linking and all that. It is more freeing to be a creator that can just write but not have to worry about some of those things. So that's an upside. I mean, you had doubled down on Pinterest already before you lost a bunch of traffic from Google. Maybe we like to do this here on the podcast. Fill us in on where you're at in anything you're comfortable sharing in terms of like what types of metrics Pinterest is driving you, just to give people a framework. You talked about how you have some niche sites.
Yep.
What are you focusing on in terms of your portfolio, and what sort of traffic is Pinterest driving? And then maybe we can kind of start to kind of undo your process a bit to learn more about it.
Sure. Yeah. I am currently a little under 1 million clicks a month. I was on another podcast, and that one I was over 1 million clicks a month from Pinterest, and I'm down because I'm down with Google traffic. So there's this phrase and that is penner's pen. So what happened in the past is people would come to my site from Google, they would see the images there, and they would pin them to Pinterest, and then those pins would get traction with Pinterest, and get visibility. They would send clicks from the Pinterest platform back to my site. So it was like this cyclical process. So once my Google traffic started to go down, that meant less people were coming to my sites, less people were pinning the images, and thus getting less traffic from Pinterest. So I did see a decline in my Pinterest traffic not too long after the HCU hit. And so what I'm doing now is I'm diversifying even more, creating more basically Pinterest friendly sites and just focusing them completely on Pinterest. And many of them are in the same exact niche. I mean, that's the beauty of it. Like with Pinterest, you've got the search feature on there, and you have the search results pages. It's similar to Google, right? You've got number 1 and number 2, number 3 rankings and so on. So I'm trying to capture all 10 rankings if I can for like some of the biggest keywords in a niche, with 10 different sites. And then there's like the feed, the home feed, which is the equivalent of like Google Discover. And so, I'm able to also show up there in the home feed and targeting that as well. So those are my current numbers, but that's my current goal right now. Is like by the end of this year, I want to have like all 10 sites just humming along, gaining more and more traffic every month. And I've been working on that this year, like January, February. I've been starting up some niche sites specifically for Pinterest. Had a big fumble recently with one of them. The server went down for like 12 hours one day. It was starting to get some really great traction with Pinterest, like sending, 5,000 visits a day. And server went down for 12 hours while I was sleeping. My VA sent me an email, but I was sleeping, so I didn't see it till the morning. And so I looked, I fixed that issue and just kind of restarted the server, fixed the issue. Site was back up. Everything's great. Couldn't figure out what caused the issue. But I looked at the analytics graph for that day, and you could see just that Pinterest traffic completely take, obviously, while the site is down. So I monitored that for about a week, and I noticed that Pinterest traffic never really recovered after the server went down. It was down like 20%, 25%. And then like a couple weeks later, the same thing happened. Server went down, site went down, and Pinterest traffic never recovered. So it went down like another 25% or so, and it's like never recovered from that.
Oh boy.
So I think there's something about starting a new site and like a new domain, because I think there is domain authority to a degree within Pinterest. And so if you're starting a new site for Pinterest, just make sure that what I'm going to be doing differently is putting everything on Cloudflare, so that if the server does go down, at least Cloudflare is going to keep it up with its cached version of the site. So that's the lesson learned from that one. To let your site go down.
I think one of my questions on my agenda does it make sense to have a multiple Pinterest profile approach? And so you've kind of answered that. I'm going to have another question for you on that. I'm going to come back to it though. Pinterest versus SEO. And this is something you and I have talked about off air. A lot of people listening, just like you, will have had or still have an SEO focused mindset in terms of their content creation process. And how, to many, certainly to me, Pinterest feels and sounds like a visual platform. So instead of kind of glossing over and going over the high level of Pinterest, we're going to assume that people can go get that information somewhere else. And let's dive deep into the concepts of why you've seen so much continuity between approaching Pinterest the same way in terms of an SEO background that you did with SEO?
Yeah. I think one of the reasons why I did well with Google SEO is because I love to learn and research and reverse engineer, try to figure out how this algorithm is working, running tests. And so once that stopped working with Google, if you're a niche site, then I just basically transfer that over to Pinterest. Yeah, it's a visual platform, but at the end of the day, they have to convert everything to, well, really ones and zeros. But before that, they have to convert things to text, right? And then they tokenize it. So, I mean, they're leveraging the same type of or similar algorithms that Google does, and they've got to convert things to numbers. And it's math at the end of the day with all these platforms. It's math. And so I took a very similar approach with trying to figure out Pinterest SEO. I didn't really do a whole lot of research to learn from others about it. And I don't know, I just like to roll up my sleeves and figure things out on my own a lot. But I have since kind of looked around, and there's not a lot of people talking about Pinterest SEO. I mean, they talk about how to do well with creating pins and everything, but there is a kind of underlying SEO approach to take to Pinterest that not a lot of people talk about and do. And really that comes down to keywords. At the end of the day, yes, it's a visual platform, but Pinterest needs the keywords. So for example, one of the things that they do with every single pin, for the most part, there are some cases where they don't do this, but they will analyze the image and they will figure out what's in the image and convert that to text. You know that they do that because if you create a Pinterest pin right now and you don't set an alt text for it when you go to pin it, then Pinterest will create an alt text for you. And even if you don't put in a pin title or description, it will create the alt text based upon what it analyzes from the image. And so it needs that text so that they can help with relevancy when people are searching or when it comes to the home feed. And they basically will take all this text and these concepts, and they handle it very similarly to Google. And that's it. With Google, entities has kind of been a big thing for the last several years with Google SEO, right? So Pinterest has something very similar. They call them interests, or they're also known as annotations. And so Pinterest has this database of 11 million plus what they call interests, which are things that people are interested in. And they are things that Pinterest has, officially cataloged into their database. Now, they have then humans who will go in and curate this database of interests. I know all this because Pinterest has a lot of patents and white papers that they published online. And I've been reading them for a while now, and it's amazing the things that they reveal about how they're handling their algorithms and using AI and machine learning. And so what they're doing is they have this human curated database of all these interests or entities or keywords that people are searching for, that they're interested in. And they're all these concepts that Pinterest is becoming aware of. And then they will officially have someone go through and they will create a taxonomy for it, meaning they'll figure out the hierarchy of what it is. So for example, if there's a concept of a pink bedroom, then the hierarchy would be, might be home decor, right? And then the above home decor would be home or something. So it's able to, they're able to catalog all this, and it's going to help them build all these connections, just like the entity graph that Google has, where behind the scenes, Google knows how all these different concepts connect to each other. Same thing with Pinterest. What's interesting about Pinterest is that they show you a lot of this because they'll show you that hierarchy or that taxonomy. And and they'll show you some related interests. So, I mean, it's amazing what they'll show you compared to what Google shows you. Google has Google Trends, where you can search for entities, but you have to start with an entity, and you can see related ones down at the bottom if you scroll down. But it's limited to you've got to know what you're looking for, and then it's gonna kind of be a guessing game. So, but a couple of months ago, I was trying to figure out how do I find all of these interests that Pinterest had. I didn't know how many they had. Now I knew one of the ways I was finding them, and the reason why they're important is because Pinterest will build out automated pages on their site based upon all of these interests.
I've seen
And
those.
these pages rank really well.
They do.
That even more so over the last like 6+ months. And so these pages send Pinterest a lot of traffic, and they're great, starting points for people to find pins around those interests and related interests and everything. And so those pages are getting traffic, and I want my pins to show up on those pages, right? And so I'm trying to figure out, hey, what are all these interests that are related to my niche? And so I would go to Google and I would do a site search. I'd do like site:/pinterest.com/ideas, then /, and then I would type in a keyword, because they put all these interest pages behind their ideas folder. And so then I was finding all these interest pages, and I was just making sure, like, anything related to my niche, I'm pinning stuff that are officially using those interests with whatever that keyword is in the pin title, description, that kind of stuff. But I found a couple months ago, I kind of stumbled upon this list of all of their interests. I think it's all of them. Who knows for sure? But I found this list. It took forever to like not only find it, and like then I had to download it, because it's like 11 million records. So it was a whole process, but I figured out, found it, and was able to put that into a database, made it searchable. So now, because Google is not indexing all 11 million of these, and this includes different languages. So I was kind of limiting to just searching Google, try to find all these interest pages. So now I've got this full database, made it searchable, ended up putting that into a tool that I created called PinClicks. And so that's been a game changer, figuring out, okay, what are all these official interests that I want to target? Because these are going to show up in search results, because these interests are very common searches, but they also show up in the home feed, which we can talk about that later. And so, yeah, that's a kind of a gold mine of being able to find those. And then, like, I happened to stumble upon what I believe is a top 20,000 interests that on the platform. So these are the things that the majority of the people on the platform are really interested in and searching for. And so I downloaded that list, and then I made that like a free searchable tool, so we can link people to that if they want to use that. It's a great tool to like figure out, could your site do well on Pinterest? Are any of the topics you're covering, are they in the top 20,000? So just kind of plug in some of those keywords in there and see what shows up. So that's been very valuable to find these interests. And like, that's just something that we can't find with Google. They're not going to basically give us their entire database of entities.
Mm-hmm.
As valuable as that would be, but Pinterest, in a way, like now we have access to that. So that's one way it's different thing, or there's some similarities, but it's a way that's different. And it's still like traditional SEO in the sense that you've got a pin title and we've got a pin description, right? So it's kind of the equivalent of like your H1 or your title tag versus your body text. Like, it's important to get the right keywords in there. And those keywords are the annotations. So I mentioned annotations a little bit ago. Annotations are basically interests. They're kind of the same thing, but Pinterest calls them annotations when they are official keywords that are associated with a pin. So here's something really kind of weird. I don't know why Pinterest does this, but if you were to go onto Pinterest, find a random pin like logged in, and look at the description area of that pin, and then take that URL, open up a browser like an incognito mode or logged out of Pinterest, paste in that pin URL, and look at it. And what you'll see is, I believe it's below the description, is going to be a bunch of bubbles of keywords. And those keywords are annotations, and really those annotations are just official interests. And you can click on them and it'll take you to that interest page that I was talking about, that idea page. So what's happening behind the scenes is that Pinterest is analyzing every pin that gets added to their platform, and they're looking at the pin title, they're looking at the description, alt text, they're looking at analyzing the image itself and extracting, all the different objects that they detect in it. And they're even looking at the site that it's linking to, the pin is linking to. So they'll look at the title and the meta description and the body text and everything. And it's going to try to find matching interests with its interest database. And then they will label and add all these annotations. So what they call them, to the pin. And so that's what you're seeing when you're logged out of Pinterest. And so if you want to have your pin show up like in the home feed, for sure, and then even it will help for the search feature, using these annotations is really important. So it's pretty amazing that like Pinterest is kind of like handing you the keywords to use, but you have to be logged out to see them, like I said, and like they don't show you them all at once. You kind of have to like, you can only see like one or two at a time, and you kind of have to vertically or horizontally scroll and copy them. It's kind of a pain. And so that's one of the reasons why, with pin clicks, I built a feature that will just extract all those for you. And you can just, with one button, copy all those annotations if you want to use them for a pin where, you want to target a particular keyword. So like my approach is very similar to Google. Like I'm going to go search Pinterest logged out. It's always important when I'm doing my research and everything, I'm logged out so that none of the results are fine-tuned to me and what like my interests that are associated with my account and user behavior. And I'm looking to see like what's ranking, 1, 2, 3 for a keyword. What are the annotations that are being used? Because I want to make sure whichever ones are being used the most, especially in those top 3 rankings, I want to make sure I'm using those annotations somewhere in my pin. And that's going to be like in the description, could be in the title, could be in the pin alt text. And then I want to include those in my body text as well in the blog post. So as you can see, like there's some similarities with approaching Pinterest SEO with Google SEO, identifying those keywords and making sure you're including them in your content to help them, surface higher within the search results. And then it also helps with showing up in the home feed. So like with the annotations, what Pinterest is doing with their home feed is for every user, they're trying to find a match of like a new pin they haven't seen before that has a matching interest. So every person on Pinterest is assigning all of these interests that I've been talking about. And that they're assigning them based on like, well, what is the user engaging with? What did the user select when they first created their Pinterest account? Pinterest will present to you a list of interests that you can follow. And so what, they're looking at that, and they're looking at like, what are you searching for? And so they're watching and observing everything that you're doing on the platform, and they're trying to find interests that they can associate with you as a user. And then on the pin level, like when you go and as a publisher and you create a pin, you upload it, it's creating those annotations, which are interests, and it's labeling your pin with all of those interests. And now it's trying to find a match between, that user and the interests associated with them and pins that have those same interests associated with them. And so that's what's going to help you show up in the home feed. And of course, there's like engagement metrics you got to work on. And Google has, engagement metrics that they use for their rankings and everything. So there's some similarity there as well.
Practical level. What does all this information mean for someone? And what I mean is, let's say you discover a degree of keywords and annotations that are viable for Pinterest, for your niche. Are you building out topical maps? Are you trying to make sure you cover every nuanced one of these? I think we can all grasp the idea that I find a keyword annotation, I got to use it in my title, I got to use it in my description. We can all get our minds around that, but at scale, maybe get really practical with how this plays out for someone and how layered you're taking this research, even how you approach your overall content plan on Pinterest.
Yeah, for sure. So it all starts with keyword research, like with SEO, right? So I'm looking at, typically I'll go to Pinterest trends first. Always a great starting point. It's an amazing tool. It would be crazy if Google offered a similar tool. I don't think they ever will, but it's very revealing because Pinterest is just basically handing you a list of thousands and thousands and thousands of searches that people are performing on the platform. And these are going to be some of the most popular ones. And so it's cool because you can, there are boxes on the left-hand side of the Pinterest Trends tool where you can select like your category that your site may fall under, and then it's going to show you the top, keywords from there. And so it's a great starting point to find some keywords that you want to target. And maybe there's some that you already have, right? So I'm sure we have people listening or watching here that have an existing blog. And so they're trying to figure out, okay, can my existing content work for Pinterest? And that's where they can use that free interest tool that I talked about earlier, but they can also plug in some of their most popular Google keywords into Pinterest trends to see what comes up. And that's a great starting point of like working with your existing content. Maybe those are the easiest wins versus like having to create all new content. Once you find one, or say there's like dozens and dozens of overlapping content that you can target with Pinterest that you're also targeting with Google, then you can start branching out from there. And what's cool is Pinterest also has a very similar feature to Google, and that is the search suggestions. So as you start searching on Pinterest in the search bar, right, it has a drop down of the search suggestions. It's another great resource to find additional keywords. Now, sometimes those keywords are best used as like H2s in a blog post, where like, you target the main keyword, you search that in Pinterest, and you'll see a drop down. And what you see in the drop down will be good secondary keywords to target. But sometimes those are good standalone topics to cover. The downside is that, you've got to manually search that. There are tools for Google that will basically like scrape all of those populated search suggestions, but not really a whole lot out there for Pinterest, so I kind of built my own, like with pen clicks, I kind of included that where we're going to, run that query. Like if you punch in dark chocolate in the Pinterest search, then like we're going to like put in dark chocolate and letter A and dark chocolate letter B and like see what comes up for each of those letters. And we'll even run numbers through it and grab all those keywords, like hundreds and hundreds of keywords. So it kind of saves a ton of time, but it's a great way to start building out a topical map of all the topics you can cover for Pinterest. But I would start, with your current content. Sometimes you get lucky and like the content you've created for Google or maybe for Facebook works really well for Pinterest. Sometimes not, and you have to completely change your approach.
Hey everyone, Spencer here, founder of Niche Pursuits. Did you know that you can find and fix your orphan pages in the WordPress dashboard with Link Whisper? An orphan page is an article you've published with no internal links pointing to it from other articles on your site. Why should you fix your orphan pages? Well, it makes your site easier to crawl for Google, which can lead to more search traffic and improve your UX for your visitors. With Link Whisper, there is no need for expensive crawlers and tedious spreadsheets. Link Whisper simplifies the entire process. The orphan page dashboard in Link Whisper shows which pages need attention. It even recommends the perfect anchor text for your internal links. Ready to revolutionize your site's internal linking? Try Link Whisper today. Use the code PODCAST and get $15 off your purchase.
When it comes to scaling this out, so let's now move into how we actually do this, right? We've got to actually, now we know what to create. Hopefully, to your point, I've already got a bunch of awesome images and URLs to send traffic to from Pinterest. That's the end goal, I think, for a lot of people. But where do I go in terms of publishing this at scale? And I'm not saying at scale meaning you're doing 100, 200, 300 pins a day. I'm really, and maybe you are, by the way. We'll get into that, I hope. But
yes.
But really more like, what's the process past keyword research, past idea research, past content research, and into practicality? What are best practices in terms of what's working now? What sort of volume do I need to do? Because again, going back to your references to the similarities that it has with Google, how frequently we post, how detailed we cover the topic. These are all important aspects to ranking inside of a Google environment. How do we get that process dialed in for a Pinterest?
So once you start, you have your keyword research done, and that's really going to kind of dictate where you go from there, depending on your niche and the topics you're covering. So you can cover topics that are primarily like information-based that people are going to read. Then you cover topics that are more maybe visual, where people want to get inspiration, right? So like for the visual inspiration, maybe it's like going back to home decor. They just want to get some inspiring ideas of ways they can, redecorate their kid's bedroom, versus maybe an informational post where maybe it's like a parenting blog post, like giving you some parenting advice for, your toddler that's throwing a tantrum in public or something. So that's going to be information that they're going to read. And so then there's like the Goldilocks of those two, and that's where you're creating content that is both visual. People want to look at the pictures, but there's also written content to go along with it. Honestly, like recipes is a great niche for that. So, Yeah. There's a reason why a lot of recipe bloggers do really well on Pinterest. You just hit that perfect mark of the visual inspiration and ideas and capturing attention, but people also are going to read. So they're going to spend a lot of time on your site, which is great for ad revenue. Yeah. Not to call it, getting the recipe niche. I'm personally not in it, but it's a great one to be in for Pinterest. So from there, you have to figure out how to approach your pins. Like once you understand the type of content you have, either it's more visual, again, like the more inspirational visual of like home decor, or like maybe you got a list of like tattoo ideas or something, like just some sort of inspiration. People are just going to visually look at all the pretty pictures, or you've got the text more information based, or you've got to cut the Goldilocks of the two combined. It's going to change how you approach your pins. So if your content is primarily text information based, then your pens are more likely going to have to be text based, meaning, yes, you'll have to have a visual picture of the pen, but you're probably going to have to put some text on it to capture people's attention. There's just a strong correlation of being able to see the text on the pen image itself, and because they're going to read it, and it's going to take them to an article where they're going to continue to read. And then if you're more of a pure like image niche where people just want inspirational pictures, then you can get away with just pinning pure images, which is way easier. All you have to do is just grab the image and pin it, and you're done. I mean, then put in the pin title, description, etc. And then there's the one that kind of combines the two, where you like with the recipes or something. A lot of times they're going to want to have like a picture of the final recipe and what it looks like, but also with some text on that. Sometimes not. Sometimes the pure images might capture people's attention. And then you can kind of play around with that, like a mix of it. Sometimes they're like collage pens where you can put a bunch of different pictures together on one pen that capture people's attention. That's great for like listicle content is good, where you've got a bunch of pictures. What that means is now you've got an idea of kind of pens to create. It's going to not only, your content is going to, and your topic's going to dictate the kind of pens to create, but also how many and how frequently you're going to pen them. Okay, so I have the framework that I like to reference when people ask me, okay, when I'm creating a blog post, how many pens should I create for it? How frequently should I pen them? Should I pen them all at once? Should I spread them out? And the framework I have is basically the more likely one person will like come across your blog post, or maybe a Pinterest board that you've created that contains all your pins for a blog post, the more likely that person will pin more than one of your pins for that one topic or that one blog post, the more likely you can go ahead and pin all those more frequently or closer together. Typically, that is going to be the case with more like visual, pure like image pins, like more ideas of, sometimes it can work like even with recipes. So say you have a recipe roundup of like, the top 25, best, pool party snacks. Someone might save, 5 or more ideas, they might want more than just one snack. So they would go in that one session and pin multiple ideas. So that means you could pin those more frequently and closer together, or even all at once. But say you've got, going back to that, toddler woman with advice for the, tantrums. And when you create a pin for that, it's usually gonna have like a text overlay with like, how to tips on like helping with your, toddler's tantrums. Well, in that case, they're going to see those pins more of as like a bookmark for a blog post, and they're just going to save that one pin. And in that case, you don't want to flood Pinterest with a bunch of pins that pretty much are all the same thing, maybe a slight variation with your pin titles and the text on it, but it's all pretty much promoting the same exact thing. Then I would spread those out over time, like pin one per week or one per month, because it doesn't look good. It's not great for engagement metrics when people see a bunch of those pins, but they're only going to save one out of 10 or something that you just posted. So once you have that kind of figured out, like your cadence of the rhythm of how you're going to pin all these over time, which I like to use the Pinterest native scheduler. I've just had found the most success with that. Some people find success using third-party schedulers like Tailwind, Pen Generator, and they'll just get those all scheduled out then. but I like to use the Pinterest scheduler. So now like you've got your pins, and sometimes you need to, create the blog post content first. And that's what I do. Like once I get the keyword research done, it's, now I've got a starting point for the blog posts, the title, and what I'm going to cover, create all that content. And then that's when we start creating all of the Pinterest pins. And I've got, a whole process to figure out, like, do we just do the pure images, or do we need to put some text overlays? We need to create collages. It kind of depends on the topic. In some cases, maybe certain categories that you cover may require different styles of pins. And again, that just kind of comes through researching your niche and really understanding what performs the best.
Is Pinterest a volume game? Is there correlation between how often I pin? And then I think the second half of that conversation is when I pin, I'm pinning a unique image, whether it's a unique image with text overlay, a collage of images. I'm pinning something like that. But is there any correlation to how many different URLs I should be pinning about? And so I guess the first part, how much of a volume game is this? The second part, how much does that relationship have to do with the number of URLs you're actually referencing?
Right. I know people who are pinning a couple times a day on a good day, and they're happy with the traffic that they're getting. It's making enough money for them every month. They're happy. So that can work. Now, in my opinion, the fewer the pins that you're creating and publishing every day, the more you're gonna have to make up for that with really good dialed in research and understanding the keywords you need to target, the annotations you need to be including, the pin designs, like what's going to perform the best. And that's just going to take researching time, experience to figure that out. But you can really dial that in so you don't need as many pins per se, versus in other people, they're scaling things out to like 50 pins a day. I do about 48 pins a day because that's kind of the limitation with the native scheduler. It's just a decent amount for that's worked well for me. But I know people who are doing like 100 up to 200 a day. Like that's the max you can do with Pinterest accounts, 200 pins a day. And some people, they were doing like 50 a day. They were doing well. They tried scaling up to 100, and then things tanked for them. And so they brought it back down to 50, and traffic went back up. And I've seen this happen like differently on different accounts. And it's just Pinterest can be weird about that and treat accounts differently. So you kind of have to find your rhythm. But my opinion, if you can get at least 5 out per day, ideally 10, the more the better. Really, it can come down to a numbers game, especially if you're in a really big niche that's really popular on Pinterest, then maybe you can get away with less. But if you're in a smaller niche, you might have to make up for that by creating more pins and just consistently pinning. And the cool part is, you can continue to pin, create new pins for existing content like all year long. You can continue to do that, continue to promote the same URLs, but also Pinterest really likes new URLs. I've seen a big shift over the last several months with Pinterest and what it's deciding to rank for keywords. And one of those things that I'm seeing more of is like new URLs, new pins, new accounts. Where traditionally with Pinterest search results, they were ranking, older, more established pins that have like high engagement. And it would just kind of take a while to knock someone down from the number 1 ranking. But right now, they've really opened it up, it seems. And so you can come in, and I've seen pins rank within a couple weeks. Whereas in the past, it would take months to do that. I mean, I'm able to see new sites I'm starting, other people are starting that are getting traction within like a month or two and getting hundreds, if not thousands of clicks a day from Pinterest. And for right now, Pinterest is kind of favoring new URLs, new sites. Just don't let your new site go down for more than a few hours.
12 is the number to avoid, as I'd say.
Right. So that's an advantage too. And so that's where my approach is with like established sites. Continue to update content with fresh images, fresh pens, but also let's still focusing on every day creating new content, creating new blog posts, new URLs, and now getting into let's just continue to target the same kind of content, same keywords, but we'll create a new URL for it, and create pins for those. That's just what Pinterest seems to be favoring the most right now.
You'd referenced user metrics, user engagement. I would imagine that's important on Pinterest. You said it was, so I'm not exactly taking a big leap of faith there. We've seen it play out pretty much everywhere, right? And I'm trying to understand the degree of importance. For example, we've had some topics recently in the podcast about Pinterest, about the Pinterest bonus, Facebook. Get my social media platforms mixed up. About Facebook, the Facebook bonus platform, Facebook organic, and it's so tweaked towards, we'll just say virality, right? Like the need for something to go viral and then the extreme interest that comes from that. And so you'll go with posts not doing much for a while or many of your posts not doing well so that you have the chance at getting one to go extremely viral. You flip that over to the Google side of things, and Google would be much more concerned with building a website out where you have that topical authority, the relevance is there. You're not just submitting thousands of URLs on your website hoping one does well. It's much more about creating, a really even breadth of content that each individual topic will be appealing to users. Where do we fall with Pinterest on this? How important is chasing virality versus playing a game of making every pin try to get a certain number of clicks and then building kind of almost like a topical authority off of that?
Yeah. I find it to be a numbers game as well, kind of similar to Facebook. Being able to just get as many pins out there that I can, that's reasonable, and hoping that, some will take off and some won't. And sometimes it depends on the season, or, it could be like a holiday or some sort of big event that you can target. And so there's just natural virality with that. And that's where I just like to cast a wide net, go for the broad, big keywords, but also cover the long tail, cover, the big events, seasonality to things, and really keeping my eye on Pinterest trends. That it's something, if you are really going after Pinterest traffic and want it to be a significant source, then keeping an eye on Pinterest trends and what's going on there at least once a week, coming times a month, for sure. Yeah, is going to give you an idea just to keep up with what's going on. Even if you're not seeing keywords that are directly like in your niche, it gives you an idea of what people are looking for, and you can find a unique angle with it, right? Maybe you're in a niche where maybe there's nothing really Christmas specific, but you can just ask ChatGPT for some ideas, give it, your sitemap or, list of topics that you cover on the site, and ask it for unique ideas for Christmas, and so that's where, you're probably going to show up more on the Pinterest home feed for that versus like the search results page. And that's okay. You can still get a ton of traffic from Pinterest home feed. You just got to make sure you're targeting the right interests, getting the right annotations to show up. And, Christmas is a big one. I mean, I'm sure that's associated with a big amount of their users. And so if you're talking about Christmas, and then there might be one other overlapping one where, parenting, right? Maybe they have that associated with you and the, interest of toddlers. Then there's maybe they might have a blog post about, how to, like, if you're on a Christmas party and you've got, toddlers there, like, how do you keep them entertained, and so everyone has a good time, the parents and the kids, so if we're just finding a unique angle with different events and seasons can help. And that's where paying attention to what's going on Pinterest trends can be your advantage.
Let me ask one website question. I know it's a Pinterest conversation, but it has to do with Pinterest. What's the structure? What's the makeup of the blog post that you're referencing? Again, we talked all about how cumbersome creating content for Google is, and all the different structure and research that goes into it. The nuance of content creation, which again, I'll reference back to your previous podcast episode. That's really what the crux of that was, is how nuanced you have to go and how detailed you have to go in creating a piece of content when you're trying to rank it on Google. We're now talking about getting the content into Pinterest and then using that platform to drive traffic back to our website. What is the blog post? What does the website end up looking like? What is a typical blog post that you're going to pin about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of overlap to what you're creating for Google and what you're creating for Pinterest in terms of how you're structuring your blog post, the content that goes into it. But like kind of what you're saying, you don't have to spend as much time optimizing for it other than sneaking in some of those annotations. would be good. And then, whatever main keyword you're targeting, you want to make sure that's in your blog post, your pin title, the basics of it. But beyond that, it really just comes down to, do you have engaging content? Are you just leveraging, if you're writing everything yourself, are you just writing in an engaging way? Or if you're leveraging AI to write for you, just having it write in a very engaging way, keep people in. And I like to have lots of images in my content. That's another way to keep people engaged and more opportunities for people to pin, right? And so if you can start finding topics that are a little more image heavy in your niche, is going to help you get more traffic from Pinterest. And so being able to, just weave those images in your blog posts. I'm known for having mine in like a carousel format because for me and my tests, they have performed better as far as user engagement. So some people will complain to me when they get into Pinterest for the first time and they're basically going all out with AI images, AI content, scaling up to 50, 100 pins a day. And they come to me and they're like, man, my timeline site is terrible from Pinterest traffic. Like, why is that? And I think it comes down to just they have either people are there for the pictures and they realize, okay, these are all the same exact pictures I'm seeing on Pinterest. It's not like a curated list, that is something unique. Or maybe they should try out, I always recommend they try out the carousel format. As old school as it is, there's a lot of people who just like to swipe through the pictures versus, the typical vertical scroll. So I always recommend just testing that out. Thea Post Slider is a great WordPress plugin to check out and test things with. But yeah, it's a very similar process as creating content for Google, honestly. Like, I didn't have to change a whole lot of my process other than I just told everybody, hey, transfer all of it, the keyword research to the time we're doing that whole SOP, we just transfer it over to Pinterest. But now I don't have really anyone on my team making sure we're hitting all these keywords, making sure that we've got the right sentence structure. I think when I was last on the podcast, I was talking about, using indices and putting them closer to this beginning of the sentence, right?
Positive sentiment, negative sentiment. Right. I was reviewing my notes from our last time.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
NLP stuff.
Yep.
Don't worry about any of that. So that person who was responsible for all that, I kind of had to let him go.
Let's start to bring it to a close by addressing the elephant in the room. And that elephant in the room is the people who are listening who are saying, okay, while I've been listening to you, Tony, I've been on Pinterest trends, I think there's a case for me to make that my niche, my interest, my website, whatever you want to call it, it could do well on Pinterest. If someone starts to follow this type of approach, and in general, just if someone starts to engage with their content on Pinterest, what type of timeline are we talking about? And again, going back to Google and back to, hey, how long does it take for me to get stuff ranking? How long does it take for me to get significant traffic? Like, what does it look like on the Pinterest side of things? It obviously is going to vary, but like, let's walk into that conversation so people can start to get their mind around what this process looks like as it scales out.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so to give you some context, I feel like I know Pinterest pretty well. I know my niches very well, and I'm starting new sites in the same niches that I'm already in, and it's taking those sites 1 to 2 months to start getting significant traffic. Like, for me, significant, like thousands per day. And I know what I'm doing, and it took a couple months. So if you're like brand new to all this, there's just going to be a natural learning curve to it, and it's going to take time. So I would say if you can't invest 6 months into this, I would wait and set it aside until you can, realistically. Yeah, I would say 6 months, and then you can start seeing some traction at that point. And even sooner if, you can figure out, dial things in, or maybe there's just a natural overlap with content you're already covering and what people are searching for on Pinterest. Now, if that's not your case, like, I've had people come to me and they're like, I'm in the dirt bike niche. Like, I talk about dirt bikes, how to, fix issues with dirt bikes, how, I review dirt bikes and all the gear. Can my site work for Pinterest? And I think there's a case that it can. Now, I think we all know Pinterest is primarily female oriented. And so, which means like you got to target your content and slant it towards that female audience. Now, there's probably some women on Pinterest who are really into dirt bikes or motocross, but probably not a whole lot. However, those women probably have men in their life that are. And so that's where you can tailor your content to target the women who have the people in their life who are into that particular topic. So for example, like maybe you put together, maybe Father's Day is coming up, right? And like your husband is really into dirt bikes, and maybe you want to give him something for Father's Day. You and the kids get together, get something for Father's Day. Maybe it's like some new helmet or something, right? And so that's where you can do a roundup post of, top 25 Father's Day gifts for men who love, for the man who loves riding dirt bikes in your life. And so just tailoring your content towards the women who had a person in their life who's into that niche. And so it's kind of one hop removed. You're normally writing content for that person who's in, like you see your niche, who passionate about it, or maybe they're researching it on Google, but now you're writing content for the person who's kind of one person removed, but they're maybe researching that or interested in it because there's a person in their life who is interested in it. And that can totally work too. Now, don't expect like millions of clicks a month from Pinterest for that, but it can be a good way to help make up for some of your Google traffic loss. And the beauty of Pinterest is that it's a free platform. It doesn't cost anything like to get going, versus like Facebook. You really, these days, you've got to start spending money on ads to like do the like campaigns, right? And build up your following. Well, that's not really the case with Pinterest. It used to be where like you really want to build up your following. I have people ask me like, okay, how many followers can I get? Can I buy followers? And the reality is you don't need any followers to do well on Pinterest. That's just not the way things work with their algorithm anymore. And so you don't have to pay to play, which is great.
That's a reasonable timeline. I think, people understanding the backstory of content creation in general, kind of be able to lean into that. And I mean, any final things that we didn't cover you think are really, really important? I'm glad you mentioned the followers thing. I had that buried on my list that we didn't get to, but just any key things about Pinterest, especially as it relates to today and going forward, that content creators listening would really want to hear as we close on.
Yeah. As mentioned, doing the research and just spending time working with Pinterest Trends tool and looking at the top, because looking to show you once you click on a keyword, then it will show you some of the top pens for it. You can then look at the Google or the Pinterest search results for that, and really taking the time to learn. I've looked at a lot of new Pinterest accounts. People will be like, "Hey, Tony, I just got into Pinterest. Would you mind? I've got a handful of stuff on there. Would you mind taking a look?" And instantly I can tell that they have not done their research. Like their pen designs, they got some random template from Canva, or they decided to put their creative hat on and take a whack at creating Pinterest pen, and the design of it just looks terrible. And the reason why I can say that is because I've spent so much time on Pinterest. I've seen what ranks really well. Mm-hmm. So I've got an idea of like the aesthetic and designs that tend to get the most saves and clicks. And I developed that through, putting in the time, doing the research. And so I just say the biggest mistake I see people make is just they try to figure it out all on their own without studying like what's ranking for different keywords and looking at those pen designs, looking at things from like, what's like the dominant color in a pen design? Mm-hmm. Look at the top 3-5 rankings for a keyword Pinterest. Yeah, what's the dominant color? If there's text on there, like what's the font style look like? How big is the font? Do you have other elements in that pen design? Paying attention to those details is really important. And I like to take inspiration from those top ranking pens for my own because they're clearly working. And so that's my biggest tip, is just spend the extra time to study what's working really well and learn and lean on that versus just trying to come up with your own designs or using templates that someone created that look pretty, but you don't know. I mean, you can test them, but they might not convert.
Well, 1 million clicks a month sounds awfully appealing. It sounds like you got a little work to do to get there, but it does sound like another great approach to getting your content in front of your target market. I think at the end of the day, we're having so many conversations on this podcast week in, week out about how content creators can get their content in front of their target market. And, I'll bring it all the way back. You got 20 years of experience in this. It's changed a lot over the years. It's really cool to hear how you've leaned into this platform, especially as a lot of people are looking for how to get their content out there. Where can people follow along with what you have going on if they want to connect with you or hear more?
Yeah, for sure. I spend a lot of my time. I've got a newsletter, tonyhill.co. You can sign up for that. I've released a free Pinterest masterclass. It's called pinpointmasterclass.com, where I just dive into more detail of what we talked about today. I show a lot of examples of how I'm structuring things and good pin designs and structuring your blog posts and all that kind of stuff, keyword research. So people are welcome to take that and check out that pin clicks. Got that free interest tool if you want to link them up to that with the top 20,000 interests there. Plug in some of your keywords, see what shows up. Yeah. So there's some good places to connect and be able to go a little deeper with Pinterest. That's
great. I will include all of that in our show notes. Tony, maybe next time we'll catch you a deep diving, Reddit image search or something. But
that's an interesting idea. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm seeing where things go over time.
I love the pivots. I love just how detailed you take this approach. But again, to bring it back full circle, Guy, this sounds so similar to a lot of the things we all used to rank our content in Google. And I think that that's going to make this process so relatable for a lot of people listening. So thanks for breaking it down for us.
For sure. My pleasure. Yeah, thanks for having me back on, man.
We'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast. I just wanted to remind you that if you are ready to start building smarter, faster, and easier internal links, you should check out Link Whisper. You can get $15 off Link Whisper when you use the coupon code PODCAST at checkout. Head over to linkwhisper.com and use the code PODCAST in order to save $15. Thanks again for listening.